That should be hot too, that tea. Nice silhouette. Yeah, it is this time.
We did that.
Yeah, let's do that too, just in case.
I think we.
I did, yeah.
We didn't steal Miriam's.
Is what?
We didn't steal Miriam's, or were the keys left?
No, they left them specifically for us. I'll try them out before we. Okay. Yay!
So we know the classes like Saturday morning. It's the time it gets in.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever decided. Yeah,
So we know the time you
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm teaching yoga next Saturday morning. So if anybody wants to come to that,
What time?
we don't know yet. Oh, okay. What time do you want it to be?
Yeah, it's gotta be 10. I would think 10.
10?
Right to, because an hour and a half?
Yeah, that's probably good. Let's say 10, let's say 10 to 11:30, unless you hear otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for coming back. It's always, you know, when you teach logic, you always just assume everyone's going to leave and I come back. So it's really exciting that almost everyone came back. Yeah. Okay. Let me check, make sure I covered all the questions. Okay. I missed one more question. What's the definition for a reason?
Anything that's a reason.
Yeah, anything but forth is a reason. I like monkeys is my favorite. I want to talk a little about the motivation for debating. I think we'll do that later. Okay, the reading. Maybe I'll talk about that now because I'll forget. So what Geshe Michael did, like I said, which was a big gift to the world, is he translated a logic book. You can't read them. They're actually written in code. Well, let me back up first. Give you the good news first. There's three parts to every logic book, or Dura also in particular. The first one is Gok, the second one is Shock, the last one is Palm. So every logic book is Gok, Shock, Palm. And Gok means you refute what the other person thinks. So, you know that reincarnation is ridiculous. You might want to refute that idea, so that's how you would start. And then Shock gives you explain. So, like, refute, explain, and then this is like counter. It's a P. So, first you refute their position, then you explain your own position, and then you refute their counter argument to your position. So all logic books are laid out this way. Now, that means they start off with this. You can't read this. It's all written in code. And we can talk about it later. I thought maybe if there's time towards the end, I'll take a bit from one of the readings and show you how you can read it. But basically there's information that's left out. And the idea is, if you're a Tibetan and you're writing a debate book and you write down all your ideas, you don't want somebody else to be able to read it because, like, if, for example, even the other monastery, you know, they debate against each other, So like if the rival monastery gets your debate book, then they know all your stuff. You know? So instead what you do is you write it in this kind of code. And what you do basically is you leave out all the defender's answers. It's just like kind of, so it's kind of like, what do you call it?
A playbook and football.
What's that?
A playbook and football.
Yeah, maybe. It's like a skeleton outline kind of, with half the information removed. So when you try to read them, you basically can't. So Geshe Michael's translation, he put some of it back, and you'll see if you look at it, it's in brackets. And the stuff that's in brackets is stuff Geshe Michael put back in. He's hoping that'll help you understand it. You still won't be able to. It's okay. So just skip that part. So anytime, if you look in the reading, anytime it says somebody makes the following claim, just skip that section. Because that's this part,
Okay.
and you can't read it. But then you want to read this part. Then this part is like what you're used to reading in ACI readings. This part is like, okay, we explain what we think about karma and emptiness and all this kind of stuff. So you should read those parts. And that's okay. But then as soon as it gets back to this and it says, assume somebody comes and makes the following claim, then skip that part. And then, yeah, just read the middle part. Because the debating parts, really, they won't make any sense to you. So what Geshe Michael recommended in the beginning was, he said, take one and meditate on it. And he's hoping you have some like amazing seed in your mind that'll pop while you're doing that, and then you go, oh, I see, what's going on? My experience is you and I don't really have karma like that. Only like Geshe Michael has karma like that. So then, in the meantime, then what we can do, like I said, I hope maybe we'll have some time, is I can show you what they're doing in the readings, and then you do the same thing. You take a little piece and you read it and you figure it out, and then if you can read one, you can read any of them, which is the cool part. Once you unlock it, then like it's all open to you, and you can read the rest of them no problem. And then there's this whole, then it's cool. There's like this whole thing that most people are never going to ever experience in their life because they can't read those books. So, okay. And then the other thing that I forgot to talk about from class 1, if you were doing homework, is the reading talks a little bit about what there's always two kinds of people, right? So in this version, there's two kinds of people. There's people that do things based on faith, and then there's people that do things on reasoning. So the people that do things based on faith, they call poor students. Students of low capacity, and then people who can follow the logic behind the subjects, then they say those are high practitioners. So anyway, that's in the reading, and you can get it. That's it. They're just trying to impress on you that if you can, for all the reasons that we talked about, if you can prove things to yourself, then that gives you a big advantage over people who can't. That's all. So then the next big subject we'll do is what I talked about before, which is shiver. So we're going to do Mushi Musum first, because that's the easiest way to explain some of these things. And pictures are worth 1,000 words. So between any two things, there's 4 possibilities. One. Okay. Between any two things that you name, one of these 4 things has to be true. You look terrified. It's going to be okay. It's going to be fine, man. I'm telling you, it's easy. It's not that complicated. Really, it's easy. So this one is, in Tibet they call it Gelwa. We'll call it opposite. So the definition of opposite in Tibetan logic is to be one is to automatically not be the other. So, for example, red and white. If you show me something which is red, I'll show you something which is not white. Okay? If you show me something which is white, I will show you something which is not red. If you show me a cat, I will show you something which is not a dog. If you show me a dog, I will show you something which is not a cat. Right? Does that make sense? So, automatically, if it's this, it's not that. This is the first one. Opposite's not really actually the best translation, Because, for example, you don't think of red and white as opposite, right? But we're going to use opposite because the scholarly translation is mutually exclusive, which is too freaking weird. So we're just going to stick with opposite. But understand here, in this context, what opposite means is not opposite, but to be one is to automatically not be the other. Does that make sense? Okay. Then the next one in Tibet is dunchik, which means to be one is to automatically is to be the other. So, like, for example, automobile and car. You show me an automobile, I'll show you a car. Show me a car, I'll show you an automobile. Okay. So, synonym is pretty good for that one. Did I get it? Did I spell synonym? Something like that. Alright. Then these are the two that we're interested in. These are the more complicated ones, and we'll get a lot more of this into the next class. But this is the stuff about sets and subsets and how we can relate to things. But we're going to use easy examples, so it won't be difficult. So this is A, this is B. So there's 4 possibilities here. Something can be neither, right? Something can be both. Something can be A not B, or something can be B not A. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do a really easy example. This one guess you might go use this. Red and ball. So A is red, B is ball. So give me an example of something which is neither red nor ball.
Monkey.
What?
Monkey.
Monkey. Monkey's good. Although some monkeys have like red buns. That's easy. No, for a good example.
Don't go there.
Black pen, you know. Blackboard. White wall. And tons of things, right? Neither red nor ball. So give me an example of something which is both red and ball.
A red ball.
A red ball. Yeah, that's. Give me an example of something which is red but not a ball.
Apple. Strawberry.
Strawberry's good. Apple's okay. Give me something with an example of a ball but not red.
A blue ball.
A blue ball. Yeah. Baseball, basketball. So then we say this is called mushi. Mu means like possibility. Shi means 4. So all 4 possibilities are true. That's mushi. Then musum is the interesting one. So basically, one of these is not going to be possible. That's the way that you are going to be able to do a relationship like this. So I'll give you one because it's hard to come up with them otherwise. I spent like weeks in the monastery trying to think of an example, and then once you understand what it is, it's really easy. So in this one, there's only going to be 3. So you're going to have neither is possible, both is possible, but only one of these 2 relationships is going to be true. So here, the one we use all the time is car and Chevy. So give me something which is neither car nor Chevy.
Ford.
No, it's a
Oh,
car.
yeah. A Ford tractor.
Yeah, Ford tractor would be good. Anything in this room, basically, right? Anything in this room. Give me a monkey. Give me an example, which is something both a car and Chevy. Yeah. Or do they make Camaros? Corvettes?
Corvette.
Corvette. Give me an example of something which is a car but not a Chevy.
Mustang.
Mustang. Give me an example of something which is Chevy but not a car. And then, then, otherwise, well, if you say Chevy truck, then I have to pick a different example. Let's pretend Chevy doesn't make trucks. So this is a relationship of 3. So basically, to have a relationship of 3, what you have is one is a subset of the other. And we also call this a one-way relationship of dependence. So all Chevys are cars, but not all cars are Chevys. So this is actually, just for your edification, is a 2-way relationship of dependence. Automobile is a car is an automobile. This one is one way. Chevy's a car, but not all cars are Chevys. Yeah. Okay.
So the 3 in that one represents what again? That's both? 3?
Well, again, so we just play a game.
Yeah.
Like in the monastery, what you do, you just play a game. You say, okay, car and Chevy, which one is it? You know, car and Chevy, you say, which one is it? You know, I'll give you any 2 things, and you tell me which one of these 4 relationships is true. So, like for example, these are all simple examples. Then where it gets interesting is now pick something important. So if I said, like we were talking before, if I said R hot and emptiness, like the direct perception of emptiness and R hot, which one of these relationships is it?
Synonym.
Car Chevy.
Car Chevy? Well, let's check.
Or should we?
That's the way to do it. So give me something which is, let's do person. So give me an example of a person who's neither seen emptiness directly nor become an R hot.
So it's okay.
Yeah, I always say like me. Give me an example of somebody who has both seen the direct perception of emptiness and is an R hot. Yeah, who is good. Give me an example of somebody who, let's see, hasn't seen the direct perception of emptiness but is an R hot. Yeah, that was not possible. So then that tells you it's going to be this one. They give you an example of somebody who has seen emptiness directly but isn't an R hot yet. All right. Yeah, RA is good. Yeah. Well, I mean, basically somebody who's seen emptiness directly but isn't an R hot yet. Whoever that would be. So then, see, this is a relationship of 3. Does that make sense? Or did I use too many weird Sanskrit words? Okay. So the reason I brought all this up is because we're going to keep using this a lot. So the reason I'm going to do it right now is because we're going to do Shidra, categories of existence, like we talked about before. So the first thing that you learn when you study categories of existence is what the synonyms are for categories of existence. So the things that are synonymous, meaning this one, to me one is to automatically be the other. So let's see, categories of existence. Is synonymous with thing, knowable thing. E in there. Knowable thing. Knowable thing. There's one more. Write it down. Let's see, I wrote it down somewhere. Sheja, you object. We see those things are all synonymous. So what we're trying to do when we do categories of existence, like I said before, is we want to divide up all existing things. All things, anything is a thing that can be known. Anything that can be known can be an object. And we're going to talk about that in a later class, the subject-object distinction. But we would say these are all synonyms. So anything that exists is a thing. Anything which is a thing that can be known. Anything that can be known is an object that can be an object of a subject. You don't really need to know that totally yet, but just so you know. So these are all synonyms. Basically, every existing thing, how are we going to divide them? So we want to divide them into 2, and the only rule is it has to include all existing things. So for example, if I wanted to, I could divide all existing things up into Nyingpo and things that are not Nyingpo. Because that would cover all existing things. You see? Okay, that's not such a useful distinction. So instead, what we will divide all existing things into 2, and we will call them changing and unchanging. Does that make sense? So we would say all things that exist, they either have to be something which changes or something which doesn't change. Who can give me an example of something that doesn't change?
Facts.
Facts, yeah, we say facts.
Space.
Space. And there's one more.
Doesn't space change?
Emptiness. Yeah, we have to talk about it.
Oh.
So we would say facts don't, in Buddhist philosophy they say facts don't change because, does anybody know the definition of a changing thing? The short definition is K-chikma. It means moment to moment. So it's very scientific. You know, like, I don't look like I'm changing, right? But I got little atoms flaking off of me, and things are breaking down, and new cells are being formed, and like actually, it's even though you can't see it necessarily with the eye, every changing thing is changing in every instant.
it's getting hit by sunlight or light, and that's affecting the cells, and the cells are moving around. Like, we would say every changing thing has to be changing constantly. So facts don't do that. The fact that New York is not Chicago doesn't going to change. It can go out of existence. Like, if some terrible thing happens, we get smashed by an asteroid or something, and the Earth blows up, and there is no New York and there is no Chicago, that fact can go out of existence. But the fact that New York is not Chicago won't change. Does that make sense? So that's an important thing to know. Unchanging doesn't mean these are not synonymous. Does that make sense? Unchanging is not equivalent to impermanent. There are unchanging things which go out of existence. For example, when the planet gets smashed and everybody dies, the fact that New York is not Chicago will go out of existence. That doesn't mean it's changing. So you have to catch that. And that's a great thing to do mushi musuma. We won't do it right now, but maybe that's your homework if you ever come back. Do this thing. Do this thing with these two. And we can talk about it next time. Like, what's the relationship between these two? Is it mushi or is it musum? So you can think about that, and we'll talk about it. But just for now, they're not equivalent. There are unchanging things which go out of existence, and there are unchanging things which do not. So, for example, emptiness. Is it impermanent? Does it go out of existence?
No.
Yes.
What do you think?
No.
No.
Yes, give me an example.
If the object, or I guess the object's not there anymore, like almost like how you said the two cities aren't there that were factually different. They're not there anymore. There's no availability or emptiness.
Yeah, exactly. Emptiness, like, we have to get away, and part of what this is going to uncover doing these categories is emptiness is not like a thing that exists out there somewhere. Emptiness only exists if there's a thing which is empty of something. Right? This pen is empty of being good or bad. Like, some people look at the pen and they think, oh, that's great. Some people look at that thing and I hate the color black. Right? This thing has no good or bad about it, right? This object is empty of being good or bad. Right? So there's no emptiness separate from an object which it is empty of. So without something to point to and say that thing is empty, there is no emptiness. There's no like emptiness floating out in space somewhere waiting to be applied to objects. It doesn't work like that. You need an object to talk about if you want to say this thing is empty. So yeah, then what happens when this pen, I break it, lose it, whatever, it gets burned or something, then what happens to the emptiness of this pen?
It goes out of existence.
It goes out of existence. Yeah. So emptiness is also not permanent. It's impermanent. Yeah. Just like facts. Okay, space. What is space? We say space is placeholder. So we have to change our concept of what space is a little bit. Space is not the empty space between objects, which is how we usually think of it. We think space is, I guess you might let's say occupado or non-occupado. Space is the place where things exist. So space is placeholder. So imagine this space in front of me. Does it change when I do this? Why not? Because in both cases, it's a place where things can be. Whether there's a thing in it or there's not a thing in it, it's a place where things can be. Even if there's an object in it, it's still a place where things can be. If it wasn't, the pen couldn't be there. Right? So that's the space that we're talking about when we say space is unchanging. And then you have to think about that a little bit, but it's okay. So pretty much that's an all-inclusive list of unchanging objects. What about changing? Give me an example of a changing thing.
Everything else.
Everything else. And then there's different ways to do this, and we're going to get a different way to do this later. Because there's a synonym with changing, which is working or functioning. Anything which changes is also a thing which does something. So those are also synonyms. To be one is to automatically be the other. So we can also divide this list into working things and unchanging things. And we'll do that a couple classes down the road. But for right now, we're going to do changing and unchanging. So then, classically in a monastery, they split this into, well, 3 things. Well, we have to talk about that. Does anybody know what the first one is? Starts with F.
Can you say that again?
Function.
What do we divide changing things into?
Function.
No, that's a synonym. Well, let's do it this way, actually. Change that to a P. Physical things, mental things, and things which are neither physical nor mental. And I'm going to talk about what that means. So, give me an example of a physical changing thing.
Body.
Yeah, body's good. Give me an example of a mental changing thing. Yeah, any thought you ever had, any kind of thought, any emotion, any feeling towards something. Does anybody know an example of something which is changing but neither physical or mental?
Karma. Energy.
Sky.
Sky.
Concept?
Sky. We would actually, the sky would be physical. The classic example they use is Kongsock. Does anybody know what Kongsock means?
Person.
Yeah, person. And did you say it's karma?
No, I said concept. Person is a concept.
Yeah, that one goes in. Yeah, that's it exactly. Person is a concept, right? What is Nyingpo? Is Nyingpo his body or is Nyingpo his mind? Yeah, you can't say that, right? Because it has 2 parts. It has a mental part and it has a physical part, right? So we can't split them apart. So then they just throw it over here. That's basically what's going on. Then this reminds me, there's a little caveat that I should mention. Does anybody know where logic comes from in the Tibetan tradition? Which are the 4 schools? Do you guys know? No, not that 4 schools. Everything we teach comes from Gelug. So there's Gelug, Sakya. They have their own versions of this, that's true. But the 4 schools, I mean, Mind-Only School, Abhidharma, Sautrantika, Middle Way. Does anybody know where it comes from?
We don't know.
Next one up. It comes from Sautrantika. The Sutra school. So all this information is coming from the Sutra school. Is the Sutra school the highest school? No, right? What's the highest school? Yeah, Majjhimika Prasangika, right? So always take a little bit, some of this information with a tiny amount of skepticism. Because this is not coming from our highest understanding. It's coming from one of the, what we would call the lower schools, right? So if Nyingpo, right, has anybody done course 15?
Yeah.
What do they talk about in course 15? What's the name of the Tibetan baby?
Tashi.
Tashi.
Tashi, right? Hey, look, it's Tashi. Like when a baby, so make a joke, right? So imagine there's a Tibetan couple having children, and the Tibetan baby pops out. Do they go, hey, look, it's Tashi? No, right? So you fight with, have arguments. What are we going to call her? I don't know. I think we should call him this. Right? You're going to fight with each other about what to call him. Why? Because he's not that thing from his own side, right? You have to choose a name to call him. So what does that tell you? The name actually has nothing to do with him. Right? You just made it up and stuck it on him. Right? There's nothing about him which has anything to do with that name. So if we think of names that way, and we're going to talk about this a lot more in the Chichedra class, if we think about names that way, a name is just an idea, a name is just a concept, would that be a changing thing or an unchanging thing?
Changing. Just a concept.
So you think concepts are changing?
Not moment to moment.
Yeah, that's the key. Right? Let's take a concept, blue. Right? What you think of in your mind is blue. Does that change moment to moment? No, right? I mean, it could. Somebody could come along later and say, that's not blue. This is what blue looks like. But we would say then is actually your old concept of blue went out of existence and a new concept of blue came into existence, right? Because otherwise, your concept of blue has to be changing moment to moment, right? So is that true? Is your concept of blue changing moment to moment?
No, all different shades of blue. Every time you think of blue, you think of a different shade.
Yeah, sure, but that exists within your concept of what blue is, right? Yeah.
Is that where like the difference? Is that how? Is that chart like figure? What's the Majjhimika chart? Like, is that like where you get into those discrepancies, right?
Yeah. Yeah, what I'm getting at is we have to, some of this we should question a little bit. I have to give it to you this way because this is the way it's taught, right? But then at some point you should reanalyze it all and decide whether you believe any of it or not. Because it's all still open to interpretation until you figure out the logic behind all of it. So a lot of people, they'll go to class with some Tibetan Lama, he'll say, Kangsag is changing, neither, Denman Duje, see you next week. And then people are like, okay, all right. But you never really think about it, never really analyze it, never really think if it's true or not. Because in the Tibetan system, there are these 4 different schools, and any, Tibetan Geshe will teach you randomly from any of those 4 schools whenever it's convenient for them. So, unless you know how to look at things and analyze them yourself, you might have a lot of kind of weird ideas, weird sort of contradictory ideas all flowing through your mind, thinking it's all fine, until you try to debate with somebody, which is the argument for debating. Which again, I'm going to save that for later. But the reason why we debate at the monastery is you think you understand emptiness, and then you go to the debate ground. And then you get hammered, and you realize you didn't know anything about it. So that's really the argument for debating. If we debate something, it forces you to really learn these ideas. And that's the idea behind this whole concept here again. You're all getting glassy-eyed on me, I can tell. So I want to I want to talk about why we do this at all. Who cares? What's the point of all this? Well, to draw that, to put some purpose behind this, again, this is the reason why we all suffer. I think I am Nyingpo. Nyingpo has certain characteristics. Nyingpo's body doesn't hurt him. Nyingpo's mind is always happy, right? And then what happens? Reality intrudes, and I get I hurt my shoulder in yoga class. And then what happens? Then I get upset. Because see, a hurt shoulder doesn't fit my concept of Nyingpo. See, Nyingpo's concept of himself doesn't include injured shoulder, right? So then when I get my shoulder injured, I freak out. The same way with my laptop, right? My laptop breaks. My laptop's not supposed to break. I paid $3,000 for this stupid thing. It's supposed to work how I want it to work, right? So then what happens when it doesn't work? I get upset, right? And I add another layer of suffering on to what was already a problem before, So at the very least, if we understand these concepts, you can shave off the extra layer of suffering. Like when my laptop breaks, I don't freak out and think, why did I spend so much money on this stupid laptop? I think, oh look, it's a changing thing. Its nature is eventually at some point, it's going to do something else, right? And then I can accept that. So, I still want my laptop to work, and we can talk about that. But at least I don't have that extra layer of suffering that you put on top of it. In the same way, you have this mental construct of yourself in your mind. And when everything challenges that, you freak out, right? But if we understand that it's just a concept, is Nyingpo a good person or a bad person? Yes. Why? Because Nyingpo's just a concept. Nyingpo's empty, good things, bad things, all kinds of crazy stuff can happen with Nyingpo. It doesn't. See, we lock our minds into something. We think it has to be this way, and then of course it's not going to cooperate with us. And then when it doesn't, then of course we struggle and suffer. So, but the other thing, where this gets useful, is when you start debating. For example, you want to debate emptiness. You learned about emptiness. It sounds kind of cool. It's like anything's possible. Everything's empty. Oh, great. So let's debate emptiness, and then these questions will come up about what emptiness is and what emptiness is not. And if you have this structure in your mind, you can eliminate a lot of mistaken thoughts about what emptiness is. Let me think of an example. Here's the easiest one. This is one I use all the time. I was just talking with somebody about this. Another kind of weird characteristic of unchanging things is they all tend to be negation of something. So emptiness negates self-existence, space negates obstruction, and facts, that's what they were asking me about. If you think about a fact, so let's say this pen is red, that's a fact, right? It's not totally red, but you make it overly complicated. Let's say, okay, the fact, this pen is red. Okay, that gives you one true positive piece of information. What else does it tell you?
It's not white.
It's not white, it's not blue, it's not black, it's not yellow, it's not green.
It's not
So when
red.
what's that?
and it's not a ball. And
It's not a ball, it's not an antelope, it's not a monkey. Right? So when you think about it, okay, it's a positive fact. Right? This pen is red. But which information is more prevalent? What does that actually tell you more of? It actually tells you more of what it's not. Right? And that comes up in this school a lot, because in this school, they say the way you would arrive at this thing is somehow your mind is like rifling through everything. There's like a, nobody has them anymore. What are those things for your car if you put on people's contact? Rolodex, right?
Rolodex.
There's like a Rolodex in your mind, like zzz, monkey, elephant, car, bananas, pen, yes. So in this school, they say that's how you arrive at what something is. And it's a little bit goofy, but there is a reason why we should think about it. And it has to do with negation, which we're not talking about right now. But if you understand, if you know, for example, that emptiness is an unchanging thing, then you know emptiness is negative. And then when you know if emptiness is negative, you'll read description of emptiness in books. Lots of very good Buddhist teachers will describe emptiness, and they will describe it as something positive. And the second you read a description like that, you know that person is not actually anymore talking about emptiness. It's very simple, it's very clean, it works very well, and we could probably, don't tell Michael, we could probably go out here and grab a book off the shelf and find somebody who describes emptiness positively. And when you do that, again, once you study this, you know, like, this person's not really, you know, they may be a good person, they may know a lot about Buddhism, but they're not really clean in their thinking. Because that's the easiest thing to know about that. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah.
Could you just describe emptiness positively and then describe emptiness negatively?
Sure we can, and that's great because they say that two sides of the same coin is deceptive reality and ultimate reality. So a synonym for emptiness is ultimate reality. We say the only ultimate thing in the world, which is in my book, by the way. A lot of people hear emptiness discussed and they think it's some kind of subjectivism, but it's not, because we say there is an ultimate thing. It's just the only ultimate thing is emptiness. So if you like, we could do it this way. Same thing. If we wanted to divide all existing things into something, we could divide all existing things into ultimate. That's terrible. That says ultimate, believe it or not. And then we say deceptive. Sometimes you'll hear that translated as relative, but I guess you might remember that's deceptive because that's an actual better translation of the Tibetan word. They use in Tibetan they use kudzomdenpa, and that means deceptive. And the reason why is because things in deceptive reality trick you. How do they trick you? What's that? Yeah, you think that they exist the way they look. You know, I think this pen is coming at me. You know, and if I enjoy this pen, I think this is a good pen, right? I think good pen coming this way. I think it has nothing to do with me and how I look at it. But if that was true, then everybody would have to see it as a good pen, which is not true, right? So the deceptive thing about deceptive reality is everything's doing this. You're always being tricked. Everything you're looking at is fooling you. It's looking like it's coming out there towards you, and nothing actually exists that way. So in Tibetan, they call deceptive reality versus ultimate reality. So what was your question?
How would somebody describe emptiness negatively?
Oh, good. Yeah, sorry. So one definition for ultimate reality is nothing is other than that which you project. So I am projecting this as a good pen. That idea, that concept, good pen, is coming from me. So emptiness has to be negating something. So emptiness says emptiness is nothing other than this. Right? Then if you want a deceptive definition for deceptive reality, we say this is the way things are appearing to you. So then see, emptiness just turns it around and says nothing appears any other way than that. Does that make sense? A little bit? Yeah. Absorb, yeah, I think.
Just absorb it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, of course.
And then the positive way is saying like dependent origination, is that the other side?
Correct. Yeah, so a synonym for this ultimate reality is emptiness. And a synonym for deceptive reality is dependent origination. And then there's the famous Tsongkhapa poem, right, that says once you understand how they're not contradictory but they actually reinforce each other, then you know your knowledge of the Dharma is complete. Because people the Buddha's always teaching not to fall into what he calls the two extremes. So the original two extremes, does anybody know? It was aestheticism and materialism. He said that the Buddha was teaching the path between extreme aestheticism, living in the desert, holding your arm up, crazy stuff like that, versus, being a merchant and just making money and having kids and not thinking about anything else. So he said there's a way between those two things, which is better, Then he also said there's a way between other two things. The other two extremes are, philosophically, if all things are empty, nothing exists. That's one extreme. And the nihilism. And then the other extreme is, okay, things exist the way they look. So Buddha's also trying to split down the middle of that. So, okay, things don't exist the way they look, they're all empty. That doesn't mean nothing matters. And nihilism is correct. We say, because things are empty, if it's true this pen is empty and good pen is coming from me, then what does that mean? How should I treat other people?
You want to be treated.
Yeah, if I want this to be a good pen, then I have to help people with this. Then this will appear to me as something good, right? If I write things about helping people with a pen, then every time I see a pen, I'll think, pens are good, right? But did anybody see, one second, did anybody see, what's that movie you like with the guy from Good Will Hunting? Matt Damon. Yeah, what's Born Identity. And I think it was the second one, right, where he stabs the guy with the pen. Oh, nobody saw it? Rats. We all thought it was hilarious, because Geshe Michael's always using pens. Geshe Michael's always using pens as an example. And then in that movie, there's one scene where he gets ambushed by this assassin, and he doesn't have a gun on him or anything, so he grabs this pen, and he stabs the guy with the pen. Right? What's that?
I saw that.
You saw it? Yeah, it was one of the Born Identity movies. I forget which one. So we all thought it was really funny because if I asked you, give me a definition of pen, you probably wouldn't say something I can stab someone with. But that's the emptiness of the pen. Because the pen is empty, it is something you can stab somebody with. You could write with it, you could stab somebody with it, you can scratch your back with it. Because it's available to be all those things. Right? So I'm a person, every time I see a pen, I think I can pick it up and stab somebody with it, right? Then my perception of pen, right, is going to be very different from someone who, writes love letters with it. Right? We're going to have very different feeling towards pen. Okay.
So does that mean that it's neither and both?
Yes. Yeah. From a deceptive reality or a dependent origination view, you would say it's both. It's both something you can stab somebody with and something you could write with. From an emptiness perspective, you would say it's neither. It's neither a pen. By itself, it's neither a pen nor something you could stab somebody with. But that's the trick of the whole thing, is understanding that those aren't contradictory. If you say show me if I say show me something which can write, then I'll say I show you something which is empty. They actually cooperate. This thing couldn't write if it wasn't empty. Right? If it had some self-existence, if it was what it was from its own side, you couldn't use it to write. And then that's a much bigger subject. But look at it the other way, which is much simpler, which is if it wasn't empty, it wouldn't be something you couldn't see as something which could write. The fact that this is available, Geshe Michael always uses chew toy, right? That this is actually a chew toy. If I give this to a dog, he'll chew on it. Right? The reason why you can see this chew toy is something to write with is because that thing's empty. If it wasn't empty, it couldn't be something you could write with. You'd be stuck seeing it as a chew toy too. Actually, it goes both ways, right? The dog couldn't chew on it either. But you'd be stuck seeing it as a pen. The fact that it is empty is why it's available to be those things. Right? So emptiness never negates anything. It just negates where it's coming from. That's it. It doesn't mean things don't exist. It doesn't mean you shouldn't take care of people. In fact, it means the opposite. You have to take care of people now. Because the only way you'll see the things you want to see is if you take care of people. If you don't take care of people, then you'll see things coming back to you that you don't like. Right? Which none of us really want. But what does Master Shantideva say? Anybody know? We run towards the things that we despise. We run away from everything that would make us happy. Right? Because if I see something I want, what do?
Grasp.
It's mine.
Yeah.
You can't have it. Get away from me. Right? Which is the exact way to lose it. karmically. Right? If I want to keep this thing, the smartest thing to do is to do what? Give it away. Right? And then I'll have more than I can even deal with. But anyway, that's long-term thinking. Yeah.
Okay, back to logic, I guess, and dividing things into categories. So then, if you're going to divide all objects, which into those two categories there in the upper right-hand corner, deceptive,
This one?
dependent origination, and ultimate. But then it seems like what you're saying there is that the pen is both. So what's the point of having categories if you have all these things that, I mean, if everything fits into both categories, then what are the categories?
Nothing would fit into both categories because emptiness is over here and pen's over here. So pen has emptiness, but pen is not emptiness.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're mutually exclusive again. Yeah. Yeah, they can't bleed into each other. If they bleed into each other, then you have a giant mess, and it doesn't help you do anything.
The words are then your sets that you're making are meaningless.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you can't say, you can't put pen over here, and you can't put emptiness over here. You have to say, I mean, it's more, in the Tibetan it's easier. See, we say the pen is empty. You don't actually say that in Tibetan. In Tibetan you say, a pen is nyugu and emptiness is tongpani. You would say nyugu tongpa yu, which means the pen has emptiness. Which, it's okay, but that's true. Maybe that's why you got into that. See, if I say the pen is empty, that's actually not quite correct. It's better to think the pen has emptiness, because it's not true that the pen is emptiness anyway. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Right. So in that case, I think the slippery slope, or the tricky kind of wordsmithing that you have to do, is that when you say pen, you also have a different concept, which is the thing that you are calling the pen, but isn't actually the pen. It's the.
Well, no, yeah. So this is a pen. I guess you might always makes the joke, like if you don't believe it, come here, I'll draw a mustache on it. So, like, it is a pen. And the tricky part, like kind of what I'm trying to get at, is the tricky part is you can't see those things as contradictory, which is what we want to do. Our mind wants to do that. Our mind wants to say this thing is not a pen now. Now that I understand this thing is empty, my mind wants to say it's not a pen. But it is a pen, and it's empty. And the only reason why it could be a pen is because it's empty. Your mind's going to want to resist that. Your mind doesn't like that. Your mind wants to, it's been forever, your mind has been saying, that thing is a pen. Like, God, everybody knows that. It's a pen, right? So then as soon as we want to say, well, it is a pen, but it's not a pen the way you thought it was, then your mind wants to slide into, you're saying that's not a pen, which is, I'm not doing that. It is a pen. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Let's do a syllogism so we practice a little bit. Let's do so this is the syllogism that I used to always teach first, and then I found it just confused the hell out of people. And the reason this helped the light bulb come on, how I realized this. The reason why this syllogism was so difficult for people is because they didn't know this part. So I'm like, look people, this is simple. But that's because I've got this in the back of my head already, and they didn't. So I had a huge advantage, a huge unfair advantage. But this used to be the traditional syllogism that we would always teach first. The story goes, the Buddha was meditating on a tree, and somebody walked past and said, "Om is the eternal sound of the universe." And then he invited them to a debate. So what we say is, consider sound, could be Om. It's changing because it's made. Okay. So, yeah, I didn't tell you that yet. So this is another synonym for changing. Made. Anything which changes does something, right? Anything which does something makes something. And if it makes something, it must have been made itself, right? So those are all synonyms. If it's made, that means it's made to do something, which means it changes. If it changes, it works. And if it works, it must have been made to do it. Does that make sense? No?
Can you do that again?
Yeah. We'll do so pen. So this pen made? Yeah, somebody had to make the pen, right? Does it function? Does it work? Yeah, all right, I can write with it. All right, does it change? Has to, like we said, molecules flaking off of it or whatever. Eventually I'll lose the cap, it'll dry out. Probably, standing in front of you guys, I'll forget to put the cap on, it'll dry out, I won't be able to use it anymore. Right, so it changes, it works, and it has to have been made. So we're just saying, because anything that you point at that's going to be true of all three of those things, and those three things are equivalent. What else? Thoughts are the same, right? If I think something, it had to have been made, right? Something had to think it, right? It does something, it's going to cause me to feel some way or think some way, right? And it's what? Next inch is going to change to some other thought, right? So mental things, physical things, both. All made, all changing, all working. And there's two more that we'll add on, but not right now, because I can tell again I'm getting the deer headlights look. Okay, so now you know what you need to know to process this syllogism. Okay, so how do we tell if the syllogism is true?
3 tests.
Run the 3 tests. Thank you. What's test number 1?
Made and sound.
Yeah. 1 and 3. So it's a relationship between sound and things that are made.
Yes.
Yeah, right? You have to make a sound, right? If I want to make a sound, if I want to hear a sound, I got to make it. I got to do something to make it. Okay, so it passes the first test. What's the second test? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
if 3 is 2, then 2 must be true. Everybody say, if 3 is true, then 2 must be true. Okay, so if it's true, if something is made, is it changing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, has to be.
Yeah.
Because we know these things are all synonyms, or you would if you'd been 13 in a Tibetan monastery. This is what they teach you when you're 13 in a Tibetan monastery. They teach you this thing, right? So this is so easy. Like a 13-year-old Tibetan kid would just rattle this off. He's like, yeah, it's good. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't struggle over it. He's not sweating the answer. Nothing. He's like, he's got it. Why? Because he has this in his head already. But I would teach this to people, and they'd be like, well, I don't know. God, changing and made, are those different, the same? Let me think about it. What about pens? Is basketball? Are basketballs changing and made? Yeah, that's probably okay. What about, see, and then there's all this like mental struggling, they just spend like weeks trying to figure out if it's true or not. It's done. It's done. You just learn this, and then it's easy. Does that make sense? Okay. And what's test number 3, just for our practice?
If it's not 2, then it's not.
Not 2, not 3. Good. So if something is not changing, does that mean it cannot have been made?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, because those are synonyms. I mean, basically what you're doing is you're kicking it over to this end of things, see? So these are the same, these are opposite. So if you say not changing, can't be made, because made things are over here. Does that make sense?
So it's a true argument then?
Yes.
What it's saying?
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, this is how
It's true by the 3 tests.
This is how Buddha embarrassed the Hindu guy.
Okay.
No, I'm teasing. But if somebody came up to me and said Om is the eternal sound of the universe, I'd be like, okay, what do you mean when you say that? The first thing I'd say is, okay, well, is Om a sound? And if they say yes, Om is a sound, then they have a problem, because it's not going to logically work out. If they meant Om means something else, like maybe it's some divine principle or something, then we can keep talking, maybe it means something else to them. So it's always, I mention that all the time because, I love to, like Mercedes wanted to do some, just slip God in here, and everybody freaks out. But the most important thing whenever you're going to debate something is you've got to agree on a definition. Like, what is it, the thing that you're talking about? So when you say God, people have like all kinds of ideas about what that might mean, And I can prove or disprove the existence of God depending on what definition you give me. If you say God is eternal, unchanging, then what am I going to say?
Is it made?
Yeah. Does he do anything?
Yeah.
Because if he did something, he goes on this half of the chart. If he's unchanging and eternal, and he's over here, and he didn't do anything, then he didn't do anything. So you got to pick which half you want him to go in. If he goes over here, then that's fine. He goes over here, but don't ask him for help because he can't do nothing. And if he can help you, then don't tell me he's unchanging because then he did something. It doesn't make any damn sense. It's a mystery. But I'm not saying there's no God. I'm saying that kind of God doesn't make any sense. Right? We have to talk about what we mean by, God if we're going to talk about God. Okay, blah, blah. All right. Make sense?
I have a question.
Yes.
So emptiness is unchanging, but it's not permanent.
Correct.
So it comes into existence when the object comes into existence, but it's not made. The object
Correct.
was made, and then the emptiness came with it.
Correct.
The object has emptiness.
And and you have to struggle with that a little bit, and you're supposed to.
Okay.
And Geshe Michaels taught, this is a little bit off the subject, but it's fine. Geshe Michaels taught that if you ever want to understand subtle impermanence, which is really important because that's the third stage of the second path. So if you would like to make it to the third stage of the second path, you've got to understand subtle impermanence. And he said that it's something to do with the difference between how changing things stop and unchanging things cease. The difference between those two things. And I can't say anything else about it other than that. You just have to think about it. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay.
So is that what you meant? Maybe what you meant by you were talking about attributes before? That, for example, emptiness is an attribute of something. So you're maybe separating the attributes from the things that they are applied to.
Yeah, they're different things.
Can you repeat the difference between a changing thing stopping and unchanging thing ceasing?
No.
What did you say?
That's what you just had to figure it out somehow. But because changing things gradually over time come to a stop, right? Eventually, like I said, my pen, I'll lose the lid, the ink will dry out. It'll give you some indication that it's coming to a stop, But unchanging things don't do that. They just pop in and out of existence. Like when the emptiness of the pen is gone, it's just gone. It's always, that's one of in course 6, right? Attributes of a diamond, right? A diamond is always a diamond. It's not less of a diamond or more of a diamond. It's always 100% diamond. And that's why that's one of the reasons why diamonds are such a great example for emptiness, or a great metaphor for emptiness. So in the same way, so the emptiness of the pen is always 100% empty, and then it's gone. The emptiness of the pen, it never gets less empty.
Yeah.
It's not like as the pen goes out of existence, the pen gets slightly less empty. Like it doesn't do that.
Right.
It's just gone.
So even the word for that is tricky because I was like, cease. Did you say cease?
Yeah.
Pop in and out. Like I know what you mean. Like it's.
Yeah. No, you have to define it. What's the difference between stopping and ceasing? Well, we have to talk
It's
about
like an
that.
internal working on this definition.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So the pen stops being something you can write with, but it is still something you can do other things with.
You mean when it's not a pen anymore, or it's
When it's
becomes
not
a broken
something to
pen?
write with
Yeah,
anymore.
Sure.
So then does it stop?
Which?
I guess I'm getting confused because when we were talking before, you said that it has emptiness apart from what you are sort of making it to some extent. I don't know. Like you said, okay, well, when you think of this as something to write with, then that's something that you have, I guess, thought of. But otherwise, it has emptiness. I guess I'm getting confused because now you're saying that it stops.
Yeah.
But you can still do things with that pen apart from writing. It
Sure, but
still
it's not a
has-
pen anymore. If you define pen as something I can write with,
Okay, so
and
then the
the ink
definition
dries
is
out.
something you can write with.
yeah, and then the ink dries out, then technically it's not a pen anymore. I mean, we could call it a pen, but it's not really a pen.
Okay,
And
so
more
it could still
appropriately
be an
say-
instrument to stab.
Yeah, you use a piece of plastic.
And that hasn't stopped.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And eventually that will too, eventually the plastic will degrade and, whatever, but yeah, then it just becomes something else, right? The conservation of matter, we're totally cool with it, like it makes a lot of sense. Nothing changing ever disappears, it just transforms into something else. Okay, all right, maybe that's a good place for a break. So it's 4, a little bit after 4, so let's take a 5-10 minute break again, pull ourselves together. And then we'll do some easier stuff.